like about Judgment is like it's a bit different, it's more bit legal stuff, and there's like the health bar of the bosses have similar colours and stuff. But there is a completely different combat system in Judgment. Like there's this thing called EX actions, and you do all these moves. And I do like it. I do like it. I have been enjoying, and the graphics are good as well. I like the graphics, and the Series X as well. I'll just touch on that a little bit. Like the Series X, I do like the Series X, but it feels like the Xbox One, but bearing in mind that it is a similar console because it's the Xbox, and I know I was thinking of getting a PS5, but it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it's just a console. So I got the Series X, and I'm not gonna just play Judgment on the Series X. I got Forza Horizon with it, this Forza Horizon thing with it, but I will still continue to play Judgment because I'm enjoying it.
You are about to experience the James Rambling Show, hosted by James Patton.
Hello, welcome back to the James Rambling Show for yet another episode. And this episode's coming out a bit later than usual, but, you know, I'm tired from school and stuff like that, so kind of need to mix up the schedule slightly so I can put the episodes out a bit later, but, you know, with that out of the way, today's episode I'm going to be talking about Judgment, because I have been playing Judgment, and by the way, the new James Rambling reviews episode came out, and we talked about Yakuza, we talked about every single game, and it's my longest review, and I will put the link to this in the description for that. So if you know, I do implore you to go and watch that review, but if you can't watch it, that's fine, because it's one of the longer reviews, and not everyone's into Yakuza. It's such a specific topic. So I'll talk about Judgment because I got the Series X. I've had it for a couple of days now, and I'll talk about that. I'm also going to talk about how Nicola Sturgeon got resigned as the First Minister of Scotland, and I don't really talk about world issues, but I thought it would be an interesting topic to bring up. And there's also this cyclone that happened, I want to say almost last week in New Zealand, so there's a few things on the radar, and I've been trying to get more topical recently because the history of this show is all about, and I just get too obscure, and I get way too random for no reason. I get way too random, and I just think it's a bit weird. You know, I've got to try and get more topical and talk about things that would make sense for the show and things of that nature. So yeah, so Judgment. I got the Series X a couple of days ago, and this Judgment, for those who don't know, is a spin-off game. Well, spin-off games, because there's also Lost Judgment, so it's a spin-off to Yakuza, made by the same studio as the Yakuza games, and he plays a different character, and I do like the game so far. The plot, where is the plot, shall we? I know the main character is Yagami, but I'm doing this a lot now, but I just like to reassure what I'm saying, you know, so I'll just look it up, since I don't have any behind the scenes fact checkers right now. Judgment plot summary. Alright. If this is even going to do thing. Plot. What is the plot of Judgment? It says here that Judgment is an action-adventure game with third-person perspective. It follows private detective Takayuki Yagami as he investigates a serial murder case in Kamurocho, a fictional district of Tokyo, Japan. Previously featured in the Yakuza franchise. So there are things about Judgment that have correlations to the mainline series, but it's a spin-off, so there's side things you do, and it's more of a criminal law type drama versus all the stuff you do in the Yakuza games, where you play as Kiryu, you play as Majima, you play as Ichiban, and you do all these other things that aren't really doing that, because in this game it's main cases and side cases and just main story and all that. So you're solving these cases, and then you're doing that kind of thing. You never did that in the mainline series, and that's what I like about Judgment. Is like it's a bit different. It's more about legal stuff, and there's like the health bar of the bosses have similar colours and stuff. But there is a completely different combat system in Judgment. Like there's this thing called EX actions, and you do all of these moves. And I do like it. I do like it. I have been enjoying, and the graphics are good as well. I like the graphics. And the Series X as well. I'll just touch on that a little bit. Like the Series X, I do like the Series X, but it feels like the Xbox One, but bearing in mind that it is a similar console, because it's the Xbox, and I know I was thinking of getting a PS5, but it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it's just a console. So I got the Series X, and I'm not gonna just play Judgment on the Series X. I got Forza Horizon with it, this Forza Horizon thing with it, but I will still continue to play Judgment because I'm enjoying it. Right now, do I think it's on the same level as some of the Yakuza games I've played, or all from 0 to 7? It's better. It's definitely, I'd say Judgment is better than some Yakuza games I've played, but it does its own self-contained story that you can't really say that it is technically on the same level as the mainline series, because the mainline series is not really always connected, but this game is just its own thing, and so it's hard to say that it is like better than it, because it's its own thing, meaning you can't really compare it to anything else if it's its own little thing. So I will play that. I'll play Lost Judgment as well. Maybe I will review the 2 Judgment games, we'll see. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying Judgment, and that's kind of all. That's what I think of the game. And Judgment is actually one of the most popular Yakuza spin-off games. Like, I've heard all these things about Judgment. Oh, play Judgment, it's so good, it's so good, it's so good, all this stuff. And I couldn't play Judgment on the Xbox One because it was only on the Series X. And originally it was a PS4 exclusive, and then they transferred it onto the new generation consoles, and it went onto the Series X and the PS5 and things of that nature. So I wasn't able to play Judgment immediately. And I'm just going to say that you don't need to play every single Yakuza game just to play every single like mainline game just to enjoy Judgment. There's references, like you still go in taxis, and you still go like in taxis like in the Yakuza games, and the health bars, and the boss fight health bars are reminiscent of the Yakuza games, and there are things about it, right? Like, I mean, there is this case where you do solve this thing to do with this, how this Yakuza, like the Yakuza took this Yakuza member's eye out, and all this stuff. But to say that you need to play every single mainline Yakuza game to appreciate it, no. If the mainline games are too overwhelming because there's so many of them, and you're looking for something to play it's condensed, or it's just its own little thing, I think I do recommend Judgment. But if you're a fan of the games already, then it's a bonus, because you've already gotten that enjoyment out of the other games, and now you're playing Judgment, and now you're enjoying that, and then you go to Lost Judgment. And I want to mention that there is also Like a Dragon Ishin, which is this new remaster or remake that came out to do with the Yakuza franchise, and I've been hearing very good things about Like a Dragon Ishin, and I'll definitely get round to it at some stage. But right now, like when it comes to games, I'm just like, don't want to buy a game that's too expensive, you know what I mean? Why wait till the prices drop? And I don't really pre-order games much. The only game I've pre-ordered is like the Avengers game, and I talked about that a while ago, but I've just never pre-ordered games. But Like a Dragon Ishin is like this game about, like, it's like a samurai period of Japan, and it's set hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before or maybe not hundreds and hundreds, but it's hundreds of years before the mainline series. But it has no connection to it. But I have seen that, like, the main character looks like Kiryu, but it is a different name and things of that nature. I've played the combat demo as well. They released this like combat demo. I got a bit of a taste of that, and that, like, you have these like katanas and guns, so it's like a western. So it's not like a fully accurate historical tale, because obviously in Japan or whenever it was, like in those days, it wasn't. They never really used guns because it's more of it became a thing later on, I think. So it doesn't necessarily feel like a samurai full-on thing, but so you have that. But I think it's like a wild dancer. There's different fighting styles, and yeah, there's like things about like a Dragon Ishin that I mean that if you've got like I mentioned Judgment, right, and that's about how like you have Judgment, and it's like that idea of, oh, if you're too overwhelmed by the mainline games, should you play this? And the same thing goes for like a Dragon Ishin, because there are things about it that I've heard that feel like a Yakuza game, but because it's set in a different location and different context and different world and things like that, it's like you can play it just separately without needing to play every single Yakuza game, which is good. I just don't want people to feel overwhelmed by these games, then to say, oh, you need to play these games to understand it. It's not like that, right? It's not like that whole thing of like, oh, you need to read this book to understand this book. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that there is options there for you, for people to actually be able to play it separately. Because I don't know, man. I never even thought I was going to be able to play all those Yakuza games. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Judgment, and a little bit about like a Dragon Ishin, a little bit about Lost Judgment, and just a little bit of Yakuza. You know, just felt like talking about some Yakuza today. So the other topics that I mentioned was the whole Nicola Sturgeon thing. And if you saw a while back, I've mentioned this a few times, but if you saw a while back, I did this episode about the Scottish Government and how Nicola Sturgeon was kind of crazy and stuff of that nature. For those who don't know, Nicola Sturgeon is the First Minister of or was the First Minister of Scotland and the party, the SNP party, the Scottish Nationalist Party, I think it's called. And recently she was resigned, and I think there was this bill that she introduced that was to do with how, like, you change your birth certificate after 3 months or something like that. And all of that stuff, it is quite a topic to go into. But I will just fact check myself here. Why has Nicola Sturgeon, hold on a minute, resigned from being the First Minister of Scotland? Because the First Minister is actually not the Prime Minister, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's read this article from the BBC, actually. Okay. Nicola Sturgeon caught everyone out on Wednesday when she announced her intention to resign as First Minister of Scotland. She said the funeral of independent activist Alan Angus on Thursday had cemented her decision, although her Butte House address detailed her state of mind in coming to her decision. It left many wondering why she had chosen to go. There are several factors that could have influenced her decision, with the First Minister having to deal with tricky political situations on a number of fronts in recent weeks. Most of these will now be inherited by her successor once the SNP, the Scottish Nationalistic Party, whatever, picked a new leader. Independence. Man, there is so many words on this article right now. So, okay, independence, in quotes, we are at a critical moment, Nicola Sturgeon said of the independence movement, with the campaign for a second referendum and ultimately its goal of creating an independent Scotland appearing to be at something of an impasse. The SNP needs to decide what to do next after the Supreme Court ruled it cannot hold an independence referendum without the UK government's consent. Miss Sturgeon favours using the next one. Okay, there is so much on this article. Okay, but really, right, I'll give you some background if you don't remember my thoughts on Nicola Sturgeon. Right, there's this thing she did like Independence, and I thought I was like Count Dankula. Like I watched a lot of videos of Count Dankula, and like I'm just trying to remember. Okay, so that's what his videos Count Dankula, and I came to find out that Nicola Sturgeon isn't the best First Minister because you've introduced the Scottish hate crime bill and these sorts of things, and like. I thought like that she was like I remember when Nicola Sturgeon announced this idea of okay, I'm going to make Scotland independent and stuff like that. But really I have learnt, and I thought that was a good thing for Nicola Sturgeon to do, but really I've learnt that Nicola Sturgeon went out of her way to do all these extreme things just to try and get what she wants. Obviously now she can't do that. And just because Nicola Sturgeon has now resigned from the has resigned as First Minister of Scotland, it doesn't mean that the proceeding leader, First Minister, whatever, is going to be the best. And obviously, I don't talk about these things a lot, but because I've talked about it before and I can elaborate it on it here, and I'm Scottish and I have my own little take on it, why don't I just jump on this little bandwagon for you? But that little thing I was talking about earlier about the 3 months of the gender, what was it? You've got 3 months to change your birth certificate. It's called the gender reform. So this was, I think that's what it was called. It says on the article, when MSPs voted in December to pass the gender recognition reform bill by 86 votes to 39, it marked a key staging point which had involved hours of debate, months of division, and years of passionate campaigning on both sides. Shouts of "shame on you" from protesters in the public gallery, God's sake, came alongside cheers and a standing ovation from others. Summing up the split in opinion, Nicola Sturgeon said the bill was about reforming an existing process that is degrading and traumatic for trans people, seeking to make it less traumatic for those who want to change their gender. Oh my god. Articles can feel so tedious sometimes, like they add so much. Like I know there's so much information, but when you're trying to read it out for a podcast, it's so crazy, like trying to read all this information. But just to give you an understanding in case you were confused as to what I was trying to talk about. So there's, however, opponents, including some within the SNP, say the new law would conflict the UK-wide Equality Law Act, for example, making it more difficult for women-only spaces to exclude people with okay, you kind of get the gist here. She's just had these are just the reasons why she has resigned from this sort of position she's in, and I've said what I've said about Nicola Sturgeon. Might link the last time. Actually, can I play it? Might play the video of the last time I talked about it, even. Yeah, I'm not embarrassed about it though. I mean, don't even know you're gonna hear it though. Okay. I do this a lot, but I just want to do it, okay? It's just me being me. Where is it? Jeez, I've made so many clips for this podcast that I can't, it's hard to find it. Okay. Where is Nicola Sturgeon? Okay, it says even Nicola Sturgeon hates freedom is one of the clips. Nicola Sturgeon, I think she's a psychopath because she's actually the First Minister, so she's behind this sort of thing. And she kind of supports the idea of actually getting rid of this. I'm just looking back at it. Basically, this person emailed her, right, and they called her a Nazi, right, and that's such a bold claim, that's such a specific claim you could call someone and say to someone, but literally, she did that and basically tried to, okay, so I was saying that's another reason why, but I kind of have went on a bit for that. Kind of went on a bit too long about how I didn't like Nicola Sturgeon. So the other topic about the resign, but this episode we're just dancing out topics here because it's a freaking rambling show, okay? You have to dance it out and extend it and ramble. So enough of that. So the cyclone that happened, it's called Cyclone Gabriel, and it happened. Okay, we might need to do more of this now. So Cyclone Gabriel. So but to briefly mention, like a cyclone is like this thing that's like, it's like when it goes like this piece of wind, and it's like this like wind like swirls around, and it's not like a tornado per se. Actually, no, it's not. It's just like, okay, let me just Google what a cyclone is. I have to do this. Sorry, cyclone meaning a system of winds rotating inwards to an area of low barometric pressure with the anti-clockwise northern hemisphere or clockwise southern hemisphere. Okay. A system. Okay, so it's like wind that happens in, but it does cause like it has a whistling sound. It's like it's like that. But really, like in my area, it was just very heavy rain. But in other parts of the country, it hit a lot of areas, and like 11,000 people lost power. Like 8 people died, I think, something like that. And it was a crazy little event that happened. This has been quite an interesting kickoff to 2023, I must say. Like, we had that whole Battle of the Hoods thing, but really nothing really happened there. But the cyclone actually did something for this nation, and you know, there has been like earthquakes in New Zealand. Maybe one day we'll maybe dive more into like what are they called again? I can't remember what they're called, right? They're like, I'm trying to think of the words, like those things, like the volcanoes and earthquakes and tsunamis, natural disasters. There we go. Might talk about that. One day, but yeah, I don't really know what else to say on the cyclone matter. I think it's a very like a crazy event that happened, but now it's kind of resolved. And I didn't really go to school then either. Like my school told us to stay off school. Right, had school off for 2 days, and it felt weird. And like I'm pretty sure like every other school was opened. It's like my school Fraser used all these excuses and things of that nature, but I think I've went on for a bit too long here. So we've talked about some like very topical subjects on this episode, but yeah, I do want to do it because it just, you know, I get to talk about something for a change that I normally probably would never talk about. Like, I don't talk about video games often, so that gave us that reason to talk about Judgment, and it just came to mind, and it tied back to the review episode I did. And then Nicola Sturgeon, because of the stuff, I'm Scottish, and then all the freedom of speech and all that, right? Okay, hope you enjoyed the episode, right? I know this episode came out later than usual, please understand that, but hope you enjoy the episode, hope you have a good weekend, I'll see you next week, and yeah, see ya. See ya, bye!